Okay, you guys, it worked. Thank God. It worked. We are officially live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. People should start coming in soon. And yeah, we can go ahead and get the show on the road. You guys feel free to take it away, and I'll be monitoring the chat on those platforms to see if anyone has any questions or things that questions or comments, and I'll put them in the chat here on Zoom for you guys to keep an eye on. So yeah, I'll be listening in. See you guys on the other side.
Great. Thank you, Gracie. I think Ollie is said his hellos and he's ready to go. Thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm Veronica Carbajal. As you all know, I'm running a mayoral campaign in El Paso, and I am really excited about today's event. We are going to be talking about LGBTQ issues beyond Pride Month. This is an issue that's extremely important to me, and I am really honored that each of our speakers is here today with us, and that you all at home are watching. I hope everyone is staying healthy and safe during this pandemic that seems to never end. And I wanted to go ahead and let you all know that even though this is an event that is put together by our campaign, each one of our participants represents different organizations, and this does not mean that they or the organization that they're with is endorsing me as mayor, but I am very honored that they have taken time out of their schedules to be a part of this. So we're going to go ahead and start doing some introductions. I'm going to start, I'll point to someone, and then if you could do the same to the following person, Dr. Yolanda Leiva.
Hi, everybody. I want to thank Veronica for the invitation to be here. I'm excited. My name is Yolanda Leiva. My pronouns are she and her. I'm a member of Paso del Sur and historian.
Thank you.
And Samantha.
Hi. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much, Veronica. I'm definitely a fangirl. My name is Sam Romero. My pronouns are she, her. And I actually this month finished up a 4-year term serving as the board president for West Fund, our local abortion fund. And I can pass it to Josh.
Hello, everyone. I just want to thank Vero again for having me here. This is a great opportunity. So my name is Josh. I am a local queer in El Paso. I've lived here all my life. And I, along with a few other local trans and queer people, run an Instagram group called EP Hotex, which is a play on El Paso, Texas and Joteria. And we're addressing systemic issues, both queer and just systemic issues in general, in El Paso, Texas. I'll pass it over to Jocelyn.
Hi, everyone, and thank you so much, Veronica, for having little old me on here. I appreciate it. So my name is Jocelyn Stout. I have lived in El Paso my entire life, and I am a transgender woman, and I'm a local singer and performer, and I am currently a board member for the Borderland Rainbow Center. Thank you so much, and I'll pass it on to Portia.
Awesome. Thank you, Jocelyn. My name is Portia Brown. I've actually only been in El Paso for 4 years, but I love it. And I don't really think I'm allowed to leave now because El Pasoans don't allow you to leave. I'm currently a public defender here in El Paso County. I am also on the board of the Borderland Rainbow Center. And as well as that, I'm just a Texan. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. I think we have one more.
All right. Hello there. I'm Mike Barunda. My pronouns are they, them. I'm the historian for Trans Youth Coalition. We are a new organization that helps youth in the area and region. We've got even people from some of the coasts asking for our resources, but we like to give youth transitional supplies for their transition, whether it be from male to female or female to male. I'm genderqueer, and it's nice to be here with you, Veronica, and also Dr. Leiva, who I had as my professor for History 2 back in my undergrad.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. So as you know, Pride Month is drawing to a close, and is in June. At least, as a lawyer, I can say that June is often a month, or has been at least in the past, a month that is really important for LGBTQ people in the courts. We just celebrated the 5th anniversary of the US Supreme Court allowing same-sex marriage. Just a couple of weeks ago, the Supreme Court of the US, again, a conservative court, no doubt about it, in the majority, has also banned work-related discrimination against people who are LGBTQ. And as a housing lawyer, I can tell you that we rely heavily on employment law in making those discrimination claims. And so I think that this is going to actually influence a lot more cases than just those involving labor and employment. So that's very exciting to me. But I know that we have so much more work to do. And I talk a lot about my grandmother. If you know me, I feel like you know my grandmother, but my grandmother was born in the 1920s in Colima. She lived her entire life in Mexico. And she taught me that the greatest freedom that anyone can know is the freedom to live free from judgment, from fear, and from shame. And this was a woman who talked to me about trans lives when I was 10 in the 80s. So none of us have an excuse for not opening our hearts and our minds to these issues and realizing that the things that we say and do have real life consequences. And so we want to divide this into 2 halves if possible, although honestly, we could go wherever you want to go with the conversation because there's so much to talk about. But we think about our conversations as sort of like, how do we help people wake up, right? How do we get them to understand and empathize and finally get it? And then how do we get people to rise? And what are we rising for, right? What are the issues that are really still challenging for our community in this particular instance, the LGBTQ community? What are those issues and how do we tackle them together in a way that's meaningful moving forward, right? We don't want to pay lip service. I mean, that waking is important, but then what we actually do with that is really the most important thing. So that said, I wanted to talk briefly about some numbers that I pulled from the Human Rights Campaign. They did a survey of 10,000 LGBT identified youth ages 13 to 17 just recently. 42% of them said that they live in a community that is not accepting to LGBT folks. And what does this mean, right? It means that 26% of them said that their biggest problem was not being accepted, being bullied, or being afraid of being out. Their peers, 22% of non-LGBT peers said that their biggest problems were grades and exams. So this is really central to the youth, right? That your focus is not being a teenager, it's about this other thing that you don't feel comfortable being in your community. And what this sadly translates to, and it was true, I know with Yolanda, with myself, the suicide rates among our youth are always very, very sad and disheartening. But when it comes to LGBT youth, the numbers are terrible. So when it comes to heterosexual high school students, 15% of them have thought about suicide. The number jumps to 43% for LGBT students. 6% of heterosexual students reported trying to commit suicide in 1 year. 29% of LGBT students. That's a third. And when we look at transgender youth, the number is 50% for transgender males and 30% of transgender females who have attempted suicide. This is unacceptable. In this day and age, like, no, this can't be. So I hope that we can have a conversation and that people that join us are people who are maybe still grappling with either their own homophobia or with how to communicate to other people about that. And with that, I really want to be quiet. I want you all to take over the conversation, and whatever I can lend as a moderator, I will lend. But for the most part, I really want to listen and learn from you. So I think we had some questions that we circulated. And the first one was about what does LGBTQ LGBTQ Pride mean to you? And if you're comfortable telling us when the first month was that you celebrated being out and what that was like.
I can start. So the first Pride I attended was in 1975. I don't even know if any of you were born in 1975, but it was 1975. It was in Austin, Texas. And what it meant to me as a 19-year-old in a very scary state, even though Austin has this reputation of being very liberal, the police were not liberal. What it meant to me as a 19-year-old was that we were brave enough to get together and take to the streets. And this was pre-corporate sponsorship. It was pre the commercialization of gay pride. And it was very grassroots, and it was very joyful.
Yes, I will go next. I guess for me, Pride means to me personally, I feel like it's a period of hope and remembrance. So, you know, a lot of lives were lost in efforts of trying to get these rights for LGBT people. And even now at this point, we still lose many people to suicide and hate crimes. So I feel like Pride is a perfect period to where like we remember those people that were lost. And it kind of helps us be reminded that we need to keep going, and these people's lives were not lost, you know, in vain. We use these people's lives and legacy as motivation to keep going, to try to get where we need to be. And I feel like it gives us hope that, you know, as we unite as one large group, it gives us that motivation to keep going, and gives basically the motivation that we can do it. And I feel like we can. The more we unite and the more we keep going, we can do it. So that is what I feel it is. Oh, and my first Pride was, I'm pretty sure, back in 2014. I had only been out as a gay boy for like a year. But at this point, I was already starting to explore my femininity and discover like who I really was. So my first Pride was in June 2014, and I went to Pride wearing female clothing and went as me, and it was a very fun memory. So.
I can go, just because I'm next to Justin on my screen. I'm 31 years young, and I came out about 5 years ago, so I was already in my mid-20s. I feel like I came out really late in life, you know, and also marriage equality was a thing, and so when I think about why I waited so long to come out as bisexual, I think about just kind of this lack of representation that I saw not only in the media, but also at my school. I feel like there's a stereotype that people have about lesbian women, and also I think that even after I came out, I struggled with not feeling queer enough. And before then, thinking like, oh, it's just a phase, and like girls just kiss girls, that's a thing. Not to mention like bi invisibility is a thing. And so when I think about LGBTQ pride, to me, it's like being that representation for my younger self, and hopefully other femme queers who are also maybe in the closet or want to see like the full diversity that the LGBTQ community has. And my first Pride is like 20.
All right, I think I can go next. See, my first Pride, no, well, Pride, what Pride means to me is being able to join up with like-minded LGBT people out in the community and to be there for each other, support each other, be visible, and just enjoy being who you are and being there to encourage other people to make the journey to find themselves. My first Pride was actually last year. It was I had been dressing and doing things for some time and coming out in drag for a while, but I'm active in the local soccer community. So we were I was with the Locomotive fan club, Eighth Notch, and we were planning the Pride game, and we did like a little Pride march, and I was kind of like the little token gay of the soccer little soccer community. So it's kind of bridging worlds there. Yeah, it's been one year. I remember my current boyfriend right now, he told me last year, you bring some hope to people that have been out for a while, because you still have this wonder and this joy to you. And I guess he's gonna say I'm not jaded yet, but I was playful and ready to bring some life to my LGBT community. So that was great, and it just Pride just keeps getting better and better for me.
I think LGBTQ pride means two things to me that jump out of my mind is freedom and understanding. I came out, I believe, in a bit of a unique time period here in the States. I would say I officially came out at 21. So that was kind of like around 2011, but let's be real, this all started in high school. And in high school, we were right on the edge of some states were starting to consider granting gay marriage, whereas other states were saying no way. And me and my friends in high school would say, there's no way they're going to let us get married. It's Texas. There's no way. To also first, first having friends that were transgender. And so having kind of that old school phase and this new school phase, I think that there's been a lot of freedom in the progression that has happened over the last couple of years. I'm amazed by what's happening. I'm excited. I was in my last semester of law school when the gay marriage was passed in 2015. I was amazed because before that, it wasn't allowed. And then when it comes to understanding, as a 16-year-old in 2006, I didn't understand what it meant for my friend to say they were transgender. And now I'm able to, talk to my friends and to see transgender people on TV and to see that these protections in federal cases like SCOTUS are being passed to help transgender and LGBT people. It's amazing, just from before high school and currently now, the changes that have happened. I would say my first Pride, we probably were sneaking in to some Austin Pride event back in like 2007. Back then, Dr. Leyva can probably agree with me, Austin Pride was like 4 people and some cute dogs, and then some flags every once in a while. It's not the same Pride that it is now, but I had the opportunity to walk in the Pride parade. I believe in 2014 with some friends of mine, there were 30 of us and the Austin streets were packed. And so to just see that difference in less than a decade is just, it's freeing. It's amazing.
Okay, I'm last. So I tend to ramble, so I'll try to be concise about all this. What Pride means to me, it's always been an ongoing thing. It's meant many things to me in my 22, almost 23 years of life. Coming out, I think it's meant, I get emotional, it's cancer season, but yeah, like coming out, building the confidence, being sexually liberated, owning your sexuality. And then also de-learning a lot of the messy stuff that you're taught with, and remembering that Pride is only afforded to us through the work of Black and Brown trans women, and like Pride was a riot. It was against police brutality. And I guess what my first Pride was in El Paso, actually. I was like 20. I just turned 21, I believe, last year. And I'm gonna be like honest and bring like, I guess, a harshness to it, but like trigger warning. I was sexually assaulted at my first Pride, and it's like you expect these queer spaces to be what they depict in movies and stuff, and of course those movies usually are very whitewashed, or these very heteronormative gays, or everything's just fine. And this happens to me, and even though this happens to me, I think it speaks to a larger volume of what it means to engage in Pride, or to engage in queer spaces. And yeah, I just want to say that now to offer like as a building block or stuff to consider, but that's my experience.
Thank you, Josh, for your honesty. I think, growth is painful, right? They're called growing pains for a reason. And I really appreciate you sharing that with us, because we all need to learn. And I do hope people are listening with their hearts wide open right now to everything that you're saying, because it's very precious to me that you're this open about what's happened. And so that leads us to our next question. Has anyone else, or if you feel comfortable talking about being discriminated against, or some other, what you think is a consequence of you being LGBT in El Paso? Have you felt marginalized in this community?
I'd like to say something. Josh, I'd like to thank you for sharing that with us. It's important that we understand the full picture of what Pride can be at times. Thank you. I have to say that El Paso is by far probably the best city to live in my mind, in my heart, as an LGBT person. I've lived in Austin. I'm from Austin. I've lived in Houston. I've spent time in Dallas. And I can't say that I've felt as safe as I feel walking downtown here that I've felt in those other larger cities. I think that my experience with prejudice in El Paso has more so stemmed from police. I think that the experiences I have, because I'm a more, and I like this word, I'm taking it back, a more butch presenting female. I think that they think that I'm a Black male, and I think that can cause some apprehension when I'm running down the street and I wave and someone doesn't wave back, or when I get a stare from a police officer, or when I get pulled over on Mesa and two officers are coming on each side, with their hand next to their waist. I think that has been more so the issue, has been police interactions. I don't think they're used to seeing, number one, I don't think they're used to seeing Black faces as much. I don't think they're used to seeing necessarily, more butch looking Black females. I think that's new to them. But I also think at the same time, I still feel safer walking downtown El Paso than I feel as safe walking downtown Houston. I was gifted in the sense that I started working at the county, and the county had a rule where I was protected for being gay before this recent SCOTUS case. And that just blew my mind. The fact that the county had Juneteenth as a county holiday right off the bat, and Cesar Chavez blew my mind. And so at the same time, I have felt the pressure, I have felt prejudiced, but this still is, it's been the best place and the safest place for me as a queer person thus far. And so I do appreciate that. And I thank El Paso for that. I think there's a lot of work to be done. And I think that conversations like this and other conversations about police violence that have been happening over the last few weeks with El Paso leaders are the right direction to take it. And of course, vote.
Thank you, Portia. Please don't leave El Paso. Just throwing that out there. Stay here forever. Would anyone else like to talk about their experiences in El Paso?
I will. I just want to start off by saying I have been very. I acknowledge the fact that I am very privileged. I have been very privileged in my experience as a transgender woman here in El Paso. I haven't experienced too many bad situations or felt like my life was in danger or anything like that. I do acknowledge that very much, and I feel very, what's the word I'm trying to say? It really hurts my heart that other people have the opposite experience. And that's one of the reasons why I started to like involve myself with the Borderland Rainbow Center and try to get more active, because I was so lucky to have a great experience, but I know other people don't have that. And, you know, it makes me feel better to at least I'm trying to do something to help those people who aren't so lucky. But I guess the only things I can really say, I mean, when I transitioned, obviously I was in high school, and there are those kids, and I mean, I got, what's the word I'm looking for? In my senior year for a practice for our senior prep rally, I got sat next to these two boys who were blatantly, just calling me names and like telling people not to talk to me because I was trans, because my transition was not a secret. I did not, that's all over my social media. And I went to a very like small school. I went to Harmony Science Academy, and we basically only have at that point, we only had like 2 campuses. So the word spread really fast. And I just got so unlucky to get sat next to these 2 boys who were making comments about my appearance, and were basically like, oh, oh, is she trans? Oh, I can tell because, oh, it's her jawline, it's her this and that, like directly in front of me, which I know, like I say, is barely anything to what other people have experienced. And like most of the issues that I've dealt with have been in school. One thing that I've also remember dealing with was, I think it was my junior year of my senior year. It was junior year. Every year the juniors would have a college trip. They would pick a college, and it was either like UT Austin or somewhere else in Texas, but usually it was like UT Austin. And I wasn't able to go because at that point my name wasn't changed and my gender marker wasn't changed. So like my dead name was still on there, and I was still on there. My driver's license still said male. So I wasn't able to go because they wouldn't allow me to be housed with the girls because, it still said my dead name and male on there. And even though I had communicated with a few of girls that I talked to there, and they were willing to write like on documentation or write letters to say, oh, we're perfectly comfortable with her, she can stay with us, blah, blah. Just because my name wasn't changed or anything, I wasn't allowed to be housed with the girls. But then I also wasn't able to be housed with the boys because I was way too feminine. So I just was not able to go on that trip because of the fact that I was transgender. I was also not allowed to use the female bathroom because of fear of conflict from parents. And then there was a couple times that I would go in there, and then it wasn't even to go to the bathroom. It was like to touch up my lipstick or something, or check my hair, or it was just something so minor, and I would get reported for it. There were people in high school who did not want me in there, and I was like, okay, I'm not really doing anything. So that was a little like hurtful and kind of like degrading, but And plus, I mean, that's my personal experience that I know one of my close friends who was constantly getting beat up at school, and administration was basically like blaming it on him, and had a horrible experience in school, and eventually actually ended up dropping out of school because of it. So, like I said, I know my experiences are not nearly as bad as other people, and I'm very grateful for that, you know. Um, and like I said, that's why I'm doing what I'm trying to do right now. I'm trying to be more active and to make an effort so people can have that same good experience that I had, and try to make a change that needs to happen, because it's just unfair. And I hope with our effort, if we keep going and keep fighting and we continue to continue with this movement and everything, I feel like we can get there one day. I mean, we're not the only group who did it. I mean, it goes all the way back in history. Like any person who, or any group of people who aren't white, male, heterosexual, or cis have to go through so much like hell just to get any basic rights. I mean, you've seen it with, Black people, LGBT people, women, for Christ's sake. So I feel like they had to go through hell, but they managed, and I feel like we can too. And I feel like we can all do it if we try, if we keep going. So sorry, I talked way too long. I'm going to continue. I'm going to go on to the next person, but thank you.
Would anyone else like to talk?
I'd like to
Yeah.
talk a little bit. Oh, should I go for
Yes, please, Dr. Leva, go for it.
As I look back over decades of being out, and I'm from El Paso, I kept leaving and I kept coming back. So I've been back for 20 years now. When I look back at my young lesbian life in El Paso as a teenager, there were times when I felt that my life was at risk. In my 30s, I had a very butch friend who everyone thought was a man when she walked down the streets, and she was raped several times by men trying to put her in her place. When I was a young woman, the police would come into the gay bars and harass us, including violently harass us. So I look back at what happened in my teens, 20s, 30s, 40s, and then, I appreciate what you said, Jocelyn, about acknowledging that you have a privileged life, because I totally have a privileged life now as a professor, and I'm a grandmother. So everyone, even if they don't like I'm queer, they like that I'm a grandmother, but they don't know the history of when I had my son. I didn't know there were virtually no lesbians having children in the 70s and 80s. And the women who did have children had been married and then come out and had children from marriages. And the state of Texas was taking those children away because lesbians were inherently unfit mothers, according to the state of Texas. So I feel very privileged that I'm old enough to be an abuelita now, but also I know that there's that history behind it that is still very painful. But also looking back, things have gotten better. Look, we're having this panel. Aside from the technology, that exists now, look, we're having this panel and being able to be honest about our lives. And I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah, number one, I really appreciate Jocelyn and Dr. Leva. I think sometimes there's this tendency, especially for me, right, to kind of like discount your experiences because it's like, oh, it's not that big a deal compared to like XYZ. When actually, like, no, those things should not be happening at all, right? Like Jocelyn, there's no reason you should have missed out on this like trip, right? Because people were trying to accommodate other people, not you. And I just wanted to acknowledge that. And I think for me, right, my experience here in El Paso has been limited, and just because I came out, I think, kind of recently. But I think also like people, it's hard for people to say bad things about El Paso because I think we all love it here and we get painted as like this like really safe community when it's like, no, that's not entirely true. I know I've been out with my partner downtown trying to have a good time, and like these men just like yelling Bible verses at us, which is like a total buzzkill. Right, which I think to me that's been like the most overtly prejudiced thing I've experienced here. But also like smaller microaggressions. I think like making assumptions about a person's sexual orientation or their gender identity, I think is also something that shouldn't be happening. I hate going to the gynecologist and then getting a lecture about like, oh, why aren't you on birth control? Right, like there's no reason why I should have to defend myself or talk about my girlfriend in that moment. So yeah, I just wanted to voice those things too, because they're maybe seem like little things, but those things count, and there's just so much more that we can improve.
All right. Well, I've noticed when I came out and I made it like a little rule of thumb, a little saying that says that nobody seems to care much about your life or what you do until you come out of the closet. Now everybody cares. When I came out, some friend, well, an acquaintance of mine that I would see once a year, he was asking me questions like, "Oh, who are you into? What do you do? What do you like? You know, this and that." And I hadn't seen him physically in probably like what 3 years, and like I was answering questions and telling him like, "Hey, just because I've out and I've changed or whatever doesn't mean I'm now PC or a stick in the mud or anything, or that I'm gonna hit on you or anything. I'm still the same old Mike." And he was like, "Okay." Well, one day I wake up and I have this big, huge, long text like from him saying how I should, when I get in drag, I should leave it in my house and spare everybody the sight. And I was disgusting as a man, and now I'm disgusting when I'm a woman. And I was like, what? Okay, like, so I think what happened is he went out with some friends to celebrate somebody's birthday, had some liquid courage, and then blew up on me in front of everybody on the phone. So I blew up on him and told him, well, you didn't seem to care much about me. And when I lived in Dallas, nobody ever came to look me up even for a beer in 15 minutes. And now all of a sudden this, like, like I didn't mean anything too much before. Why now? So I blocked him, got rid of him. So, oh well, I guess I won't see him every 2 years. And then one time I went to, not one time, I went a lot, but I go to Target, and I would go in Target, full face. And because Target's one of the more liberal companies for gender expression. And I'm walking out, and there was some beggar who, there were some people in front of me, and they're walking more towards his direction. So I turned to the left to go towards my car, and he's saying something, and then it gets louder and louder, and then I make it out, and it says something like, "Hey, brother man, can you spare some change?" And he's saying it like, "Hey, brother man, can you spare some change?" and he's saying it over and over and over again, and I'm like, eek, like he's getting closer towards me. So I just keep walking, and I had a wig on, so I had no real good peripheral vision. So he stopped following me after a while, and I got my car, and then I reported it to a Target later, because he wasn't even a customer. He wasn't even in the building. And yeah, they were really, really receptive about it. Really, they're gonna talk to the night manager, see if this guy is a regular to the outdoor the building. But that's been the only two real discrimination. I mean, there was one time I was walking around Silla Vista Mall, going to go to the Apple store, and one guy's he's pulling his kid along, and he kind of looks at me like this look like if I'm some wild animal that just walked into the mall. But no, other than that, any discrimination has been few and far between. Thank God. So we've been getting better as a society, and I do think I do credit a lot of that to the 2016 election with Bernie Sanders, to kind of move the platform a little more left and make it to where LGBT issues and gender expression is more of a critical issue, and El Paso isn't solely democratic on certain issues. So I think that has helped move equality a lot.
Thank you. Josh?
Yes. So I've been, I guess, privileged not to have experienced that much discrimination while in El Paso. I'll talk about two instances that I like relevant to the situation. But I mean, I say it kind of like funny now because I think of how ridiculous it was. But I was at Village Inn on Mesa with my friend, and I was dressed like I just gone out from the gym, basically. Like I was wearing sweats, and this man walks down the aisle at Village Inn, and he's like, "I'm sick of seeing this three-letter F word," and then and I was just like, "How? I don't think I'm registering as like queer or gay. Like what?" It was just very weird how he this man knew, but visibly I didn't look like it, and it just made me think like whatever I do, no matter how femme or queer I want to take myself, I will always be that three-letter word in their eyes. And so that happened to me a few years ago. And then the other instance, and I think a lot of the prejudice I felt was definitely from family and just growing up and stuff. And I guess I've always wanted to talk about this, but obviously it's my parents were never they weren't accepting originally. I've had to work with them. It's been a process, and now they're really good. They're one of my biggest supporters. But one thing I told them early on is you're not just going to accept me as your token queer gay son. This isn't just about me. You just can't tokenize me. This is a whole community that you have to be for. You just can't be oh, I love you like that, but there's a whole community that you have to support because I'm part of that community. You just can't tokenize you just can't blindly tokenize me, if that makes sense. You have to support the whole community. And that's my experience.
Thank you. Yes, I think that's you just touched on something that I think we need to talk about now in terms of when we talk about what it means to rise in El Paso as people who are LGBTQ. And a couple of you have, I think Mike also used the word token. And you explained it to us, Josh, what that means, right? I will accept you, maybe at home I will accept you, but when it comes to the public or it comes to supporting policies that go against my religious views, that go against my political views, then maybe not. And so how, in your experience and the work that you all have done, which I know is incredibly courageous, what kinds of issues do you think that El Paso needs to work on based on either your personal experience or the work that you've done in the community in regards to LGBT issues. And I know a number of you work with the Borderland Rainbow Center. So maybe y'all could talk about some of the work that you do there and why it's important and some of the struggles that you see people walking in with.
I'll go first. Thank you, Veronica. Just to give a shout out to Jocelyn, I believe she's still one of our youth members, and her drive and work for the organization has been incredible. I wish I was there at that age. I'm 30 and I'm like, if I see a bird, I'm distracted. So I'm very impressed. The Borderland Rainbow Center, I've been on the board, I believe, for a little bit over 2 years. They basically have set up shop and stayed. And I think that alone has been a tremendous thing for El Paso. From what I've heard, like I said, I've only been here for 4 years, is that this whole community center for the LGBT has been tried in the past and it just hasn't sticked. In larger cities in Texas, it's similar. It's a similar issue. So El Paso is not alone in having that problem. One of the reasons why I like the Borderland Rainbow Center is that they don't just say, okay, we're going to give you the safe space to talk about how you feel. They also say, okay, do you need counseling? Okay, are you a sexual assault victim? Okay, are you hungry? I think that's incredible. The Borderland Rainbow Center, if I'm not mistaken, and Veronica, I think you did some volunteer work with the organization on Monday. It's my understanding that they fed about 396 families, if I'm quoting that correctly. So I think that's one of the highlights of some of the work that has been progressive and helpful in El Paso. I think that a lot of the LGBTQ issues in El Paso, from what I've gleaned these past 4 years, are issues that are issues for people of color as well. I think it just gets worse when you add in that category of being LGBTQ, especially when it becomes LGBTQ elderly. I think that they are definitely a unrepresented population. And I think the El Paso needs to do more for our aging LGBTQ people. This is probably the first set of aging queer people that have been really visible, right? I think this is the first time we'll ever be able to speak with them about estate planning. I know there's different organizations in El Paso that are helping with those kinds of things, but I think really El Paso needs to focus on the elderly, people that are queer and transgender, and see what kind of resources they can provide for them, especially when it comes to any kind of homelessness. Thankfully, El Paso seems to have very good homeless resources, but more can be done. There's still people that are outside, that are cold, that are hungry. And I think we really need to focus on helping out the elderly who are queer.
Thank you, Portia, for saying that, for bringing up. I don't think of myself as elderly. Technically, I am, but nah, I'm still young. But I think about it a lot as well as I age, about how to age in general, you become invisible, especially as a woman. To age as a queer woman, you're even more invisible. So that is exactly one thing I wanted to bring up tonight is, what could the city do for an aging queer population in terms of housing, in terms of services? Like, I know a lot of people over 60 go to the community centers for, different classes and for, just to socialize. Like, where would older lesbians go? Where would older queer people go? So those kind of things I think are important. So thank you again, Portia, for bringing that up. That's awesome.
For me, I think the question is like super overwhelming because I think there's so much more that we can be doing. When I think about myself, right, and like I am what I call a privileged gay, right? For a lot of reasons, but when I think back to when I was younger, to when I had my own unplanned pregnancy and then my own abortion, I just feel like there are so many layers that contributed to that. And number one being just this like lack of sex ed in our schools, which by the way, in Texas, it's legal to teach sex ed. Each district just has the discretion to adopt a policy. And I think connected with that is a culture that we live in. The culture that we live in is very machismo, patriarchal. And so, at least for me, my family was not in the habit about talking about sex, about contraceptives, about a lot of things that I think would have really helped me in my youth. And so I feel like it's a lot, right? Like we need to change our culture. Like how does that even happen? But I think that's an issue. And then also, we live in a heavily militarized city. I feel like we also have this internalized idea about like law and order. Like, let's just like criminalize whoever we need to, including poor people, including transgender people, including all these other marginalized groups, and just like lock them away and throw away the key, right? And that's also a problem. I think a lot of it also stems back to our very also internalized ideas about gender roles. And then also I think there's a lot more we can do in terms of mental health. I know especially, I guess the LGBTQ community at large, but when you look at specifically bisexual people when compared to their gay and lesbian counterparts, like we suffer high rates of mental health disorders, right? And like, why is that happening? Like, why? And that's not even considering issues that, like you mentioned earlier, Veronica, about our trans youth and the suicide rate. So obviously I feel like I don't have any answers. I just know we have a lot of problems. So I'll just stop there before I keep rambling.
I'm going to add a little bit of something. So I know we're talking about schools. I feel like I should maybe add something to that because that's where I experienced most of the stuff I didn't like was in schools. But I think personally, I think there needs to be more safe space training in more of our schools. Like a lot of the schools here, like I know with the BRC, or the Berlin Language Center, we have people who do safe space training at different schools, but right now it's currently at the discretion of like the school itself. So like not every single school has it. I know for sure like my high school didn't. I think they just basically, like I was the first person to really come out as anything at that school publicly. So I really hope now they've maybe made some improvements when it comes to that. But oh, let me see what this is. Can you elaborate? Okay. Well, I don't know. I'm just gonna kind of put like I guess. Well, safe space training is basically, it educates the school system or like the school about, how to be accommodating for LGBT students and like what they can say or what they can do to make sure that LGBT students or staff can feel, safe and comfortable, and especially in a school environment. And these are like, especially in schools, they're such formative years of a person's life. I feel like it's very, very crucial and important for these young people to be able to go to school where they feel comfortable and, protected. So I think that needs to happen more in more schools, in order just for people to be more accommodating and to know better, know what things to say. Because I mean, I had some, you know, the fact that they wouldn't let me go to the bathroom to protect themselves from parents, and not really focusing on accommodating the student, you know what I mean? And stuff like that. And like with me, since I said I was like the first student to ever publicly come out at my school, because my school was very new. Like they established like in 2006. And so um they I don't think they didn't do any safe space training. They just kind of warned all the staff, oh, you know, she's gonna come back as Jocelyn, so prepare for that. No, but you know, um so that's what I feel should be like kind of implemented more. I feel like that could be a helpful tool, is to promote more safe space training in more schools. That's just my idea.
Have y'all experienced discrimination in other spaces, like with work or with housing, trying to access housing? Either yourselves or people that you work with, has that been an issue? I see folks nodding their head. Yes.
I think we might be a little nervous to rehash those events. At least for me, it's hard, right? Because you want to express that these situations are happening so that other people know they're not alone, and that they can also have someone they can speak to, right? As well as, you know, creating safe spaces. But sometimes it's hard for us to dig deep. I think a big issue is a lot of times you don't know that you're being discriminated when it happens. I think a lot of behavior that we receive comes in like a microaggression, and it might take me a few months of, you know, constantly dealing with this person or this organization or this place of business for me to understand that I'm being discriminated upon, right? I think that is really the hurdle that a lot of us have. I think by creating, for example, like this panel, a safe space to talk about it, we can start to realize, okay, you know what, this happened to me, I should have spoken up, right? For me, a lot of times I become the Black expert, right? Or the gay expert at work. And seemingly because it's so, I guess Hollywood creates this, you know, the whimsical gay friend who knows everything, or the whimsical Black woman who can solve all your problems. It's kind of a compliment, and at times, right? But then after a few months of, you know, answering the same questions or hearing the same thing from certain people or getting the same feedback from a bank or an organization, it starts to become, it doesn't feel so great, right? And then you start to realize, okay, this is actually a problem. So I think, at least for myself, I think it's hard for us to pinpoint when these things are happening because they typically come in, you know, short little microaggressions that eventually add up over time. And by the time you get there, you know, you're usually probably in a bad spot, right?
So one of my favorite areas of the law is fair housing, and there are 7 protected classes, and sex is one of them. And like we just talked about in terms of what the Supreme Court decision says in terms of employment law. And so one of the tools that's available is called testing. So you send out people who look the same on paper to go buy a house or rent an apartment, and you play with different factors, right? Like a mom with a lot of kids because familial status is protected, and a person that's single, or, you know, a gay couple versus a heterosexual couple, someone with a physical disability, you know, someone with trying to think of other protected classes, someone who's clearly of a certain religion. And it's really eye-opening when you start to see these numbers, right? El Paso hasn't had a testing program probably in over a decade, and it's something that I would love to get back. I helped apply for a grant with legal aid years ago and got denied, even though we scored really high on the grant, but El Paso was last in line for money, and so we didn't get any. But I think that we need to start creating those kinds of programs because, as you know, culture will eat policy for breakfast every time. And one way to change the culture is by, policy can also inform culture, right? But it takes longer, but still it's a way. And if you're a landlord and you get caught and you have to pay out huge damages, I think it does change your culture, your personal culture, because it's now, your bias is now costing you. And so there are tools, and I do feel, having been on the other side of this, as a very privileged straight woman, what it feels like to be tokenized and to always have to speak up for your group or your whatever it is people think that you are an expert in, because they don't want to diversify and talk to other people who are also, different than they are. But in any case, there are tools out there. And I think that there is room for us to really start talking honestly, maybe not now, but I do want us to create more safe spaces where people feel like, I do think that in that moment, that realtor stirred me away from that particular neighborhood, or that landlord said a comment that I think may have been, because I think that what happens when you are a person who belongs to different marginalized groups is that you become paranoid. And you think like, well, and then the other part of that is like, well, who do I turn to? If there is a problem, who am I reporting it to? And El Paso, besides legal aid, there aren't any other, well, now the ACLU is here, but for a while we didn't have anyone, right? So we had the Paso Norte Civil Rights Project, which did incredible work, and Portia, you know them. And then they left, and they left a vacuum. And then the ACLU has stepped in and is doing incredible work. And we have, of course, immigration nonprofits, but we don't have any consistent presence here of people taking on some of these smaller cases. Do y'all remember the Chicos Tacos case? Yes.
100%.
Yes. Does anyone want to talk about the facts if you remember them? So the Chicos Tacos case involved Chicos Tacos, and it was a gay couple who kissed inside of Chicos Tacos, and the security guard overreacted, called them slur names, and then I think that the couple, he asked them to leave, and so the couple called the police. And when the police department officers showed up, they didn't help the gay couple. They actually threatened to arrest them and accused them of sodomy, which they were not doing. And they said that's also illegal. So they threatened to arrest them. So it turned into a lawsuit, and the Paso Norte Civil Rights Project brought that lawsuit. And more than just bringing the lawsuit, it forced El Paso to have a conversation that it had been putting off having for a very long time. And so it is important sometimes for people to stick their neck out and to say, this is wrong, and I'm going to pursue it, because you have, a space to move forward. But that is very courageous. That doesn't mean that you're not going to get threats, that you're not going to be trolled, that you're not going to be harassed or fired or denied housing, right? And so I do celebrate all of you, and I am so grateful for all of you for being outspoken, because even being on this panel is a huge deal, and if you have, we're at the hour. We can keep talking if y'all would like. There's plenty more to talk about, but I do think that there, for me at least, and someone brought up, I think it was Mike who brought up Bernie Sanders, it's important sometimes to hear people in public spaces talk about these things. Sometimes if you're a person who's like in a bubble, that's very different from what I experience every day, where I have a lot of like-minded people in my surroundings. There might be someone listening who does feel like no one else thinks the way I do. So when they hear us talking, it opens up this world of opportunity and possibilities for them. And so what would you like them to know? Based on your experiences in El Paso, do they have to leave to be themselves? If they stay here, where can they find community? We talked about a couple of different spaces, but how else do you find community as someone who's LGBT in El Paso?
Can you repeat the question one more time just to make sure I understand it?
Someone who is LGBT plus and is trying to find community, how do they do that? What's a safe way to do that?
Mm,
Is that hard?
well, yeah, it is kind of difficult, but I mean, I think there's locations and like if like, because I know I might have to do that because I don't want to stay in El Paso forever. I know, like, I don't have to go out and, at some point it's like, I'm gonna have to put myself in some awkward situations, meeting different people. But there's also like locations that are like known as, LGBT places, like here in El Paso, we have different bars and like obviously the Borderland Rainbow Center, like here in El Paso specifically, Borderland Rainbow Center would be a perfect place to go to. Because not only do we have these services for like, we have clinical services, we have the food pantry, and we have the counseling. Oh, I already said that, the clinical. But we also just have fun events that we have the month. This is obviously before the pandemic. But we had like the brunches that would happen every month. We had karaoke nights and stuff like that. So I think like maybe looking for those events on social media and just trying to go to those social media, those events, and just, you could also go to those places and specify, like if you weren't sure if you were like not out, you could tell those people like, please don't put me on social media. Don't like tell anyone I was here. There's also that option, like you can go to these places but specify that you're not, and then you're not in a safe place to come out yet, so please keep me anonymous or keep me, out of the public eye. So I think, just like going to specific LGBT places and also looking on social media can be a good option. We're living in a time period now where technology has come so far. There's so many different options, and there's also like there's a lot of like dating apps that they have now have like options where you can do like for example, the app Bumble has like an option for Bumble BFF, where it helps you like find friends with common interests and stuff like that. So I think also taking advantage of the technology and the options we have today could also, help people like open their doors. So it is very helpful to have people who are going through the same experiences as you are, because other people can try to understand, but it's like you can never really fully understand what someone's going through unless you're in that position. Like for me, no one can really understand, what I'm going through as a trans person or as a trans woman unless except another trans woman. And just like with me, I can't understand the experiences of a LGBT person of color, because even though I am a quarter Hispanic, I'm very white passing. So, I don't go through that same thing that people, these prejudices or slurs that people have to deal with and stuff, so I can't experience, I could try to understand and I can empathize, but I can never fully understand. So I think it helps having people of the same experiences to help you feel not so alone. I have like multiple like two of my best friends are both trans men, and and it helps to have them, we're all in this together basically. So I know I'm talking way too long, but just try to use the technological resources that we have today because they could be a big help.
Hi, I'd like to say something also. It's really, I guess, there's a lot of LGBTQ plus people in El Paso, but the thing is, it's very, I wrote it down, like cis machismo gay, and that's predominantly who makes up the queer spaces in El Paso. Like if you go to the bars, and again, like it's pretty much like all like cis gays that could be messy sometimes, but and again, it centers alcohol too. So what about those sober spaces? And there are, but like, why does it center around the bar specifically? And again, the targeted demographic seems to be targeting this like masked gays. So I think there needs to be more spaces for other people along the queer spectrum, trans queer spectrum.
Thank you for bringing that up. I completely forgot about that. Thank you.
Oh, one of the places that I've found that like is kind of like a home away from home, and it's it's because the I think it's probably the case with everything is that the gay community tends to be the hub. The gay community tends to be the bars, but one place that it's really accepted me and become kind of a home away from home is the M Factor. I am one of the members, the core members, and they're a club that works under the El Paso Health Department, and they're just been amazing with me. We've found different ways to join together in community and do things around the area, the region, such as hiking, bowling, rock climbing, different things. And since they're with the health department, they one of the criteria is that they don't involve drugs or alcohol. So it's kind of a real healthy way to be able to build community with different people. Yeah, different people like and to have different types of gender expression. I've gone out with bowling with them. There was one time we went out to Balmorhea, but I wasn't gonna I wasn't gonna dress up in drag there because I don't know, I think that's red country. But other than that, they've been amazing, and I think they're a very healthy way to get to know people, and they a great outlet.
I think Dr. Leva had to leave to a different Zoom meeting with Antonia Morales, Toñita Morales. I think, are you back, Yoli? You're back. You're muted. We can't hear you. Can you unmute yourself? There you go.
There you go. Yeah, I had to put the other Zoom meeting in the other room. I was trying to listen to them at the same time. I guess the one thing I'd like to say before I leave is, do you remember a few years ago the It Gets Better campaign? It was a campaign started to tell, especially young queer people, that it gets better. And sorry, my dogs are all barking in the back. Come here, come here. So in my role as an educator, I've had numerous students over the years try to commit suicide. I've had numerous students get kicked out of their homes for being queer. And they didn't succeed in killing themselves. They found alternative places to live. And now I look at them often years later, and they're doing very well. You know, they're teachers. Some of them have PhDs now. They are doing well because they found the one person that would stay with them, the one person that would support them, that would have their back. So I think that finding community is a process for us often, but I think it starts with finding that one person that you can be real with, and that one person that will say, I love you. And not I love you no matter what, or I love you despite who you are, but I just love you. You know, and I think that's how we start to find community. And I'm gonna have to say goodbye. I'm sorry, but
Thank you, Dr. Leva. Thank you,
it's
Yoli.
really wonderful being on the panel with all of you. And Vero, thank you so much for arranging this panel. It
Absolutely.
shows me the kind of mayor you will be.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Well, as we get to a close, I do want to give you all space to say some final thoughts that you want to share with people. It can be about anything that you would want to say to your younger self, or to the parent of someone who is LGBTQ plus. This is your space, and so, or to your leaders. The survey that I was talking about earlier talked about how I think it was 68% of the youth said that they had heard political leaders talking negatively about LGBT issues, right? We had the bathroom issue, which is such a huge issue, right? Like, good God, we all need to use a bathroom. Like, that's the humanity of, that's what we all have in common as humans, is having to use a bathroom, and limiting people access is not only silly, it's also dangerous, because, people develop all kinds of issues because they can't use the bathroom when they want to. That said, I want to leave this open to you to spend the last couple of minutes talking about some of the things that you just want to talk about and get off your chest.
Yeah, so I think, like, clearly as a LGBTQ community, like, we have our own very, like, unique and specific issues. And also reminding people that larger issues like climate change, social inequity, mass incarceration, like, all those things are things that impact everyone, right? And so on top of that, it's queer and trans people who are disproportionately impacted by those things. And I think for me, that's like something super important to acknowledge, especially for people like who want to be allies and don't know how. Like, I know I'm someone who, like, I suffer from capitalism. My productivity is my worth, and I'm gonna be married to my job. I'm gonna prioritize work I have, stuff I need to do for West Fund over myself, over my partner, right? And it's exhausting, it is, right? But I do it because the work needs to get done. And I think specifically talking to allies, the one thing that, like, just like grinds my gears is when I hear things like, Sam, why aren't queer people doing XYZ? Or like, Sam, why aren't queer people storming Dr. Heather Wilson's office? And it's like, dude, I know, like, I'm pissed, like, I know, but like, how come the question cannot be framed like, Sam, I'm upset about this thing, like, what can I do to help, right? Like, what services can I offer? Right, and so I feel like this role of, like, active listening, which includes, I think, conversations like this, is like something super, super crucial. I think especially in El Paso, because we live in this, like, kind of cliquey city. Sometimes it's hard. We have this call out culture, we have this cancel culture, but at the end of the day, like, we all go here, right? Which is like the one Mean Girls reference I love to make. Like, we all go here, we're all on the same side. I think we all, are believe in the same thing. So, like, what does it matter? Like, if you had beef with someone 50 years ago, like, let's just let it go and look ahead and move forward. And so with that, like, I think also I would like to extend a conversation to my fellow queers, like, again, because I think, work a lot. I'm trying to graduate from grad school, like, it's a lot. And so I don't really, I think, have any real friends who aren't work related. And so if you're trying to hang, like, I think it can be super cool. And so that's also an invitation to try to build on this sense of community.
So there's a couple things I want to say. Looking at the guide here, I really liked the last two questions, and she brought up the last one about the allies. But I really liked the question about what advice would you give the next generations of LGBTQ communities as they work for collective liberation. So I really liked that one. You know, I think what I would tell people is just like not stop, like not give up. I mean, because who knows how long this is gonna last, you know? Um, so just to never quit and just, you know, try to break the curse of, you know, because some people live in these like hateful households or have hateful families. You know, try to set the example for the next generation, or like, you know, for your you know, your family that you create or something, you know. But also what feel really important to me, and I was talking about it with one of my close friends recently or just earlier today, is as LGBT people, we should feel, you know, not entitled, but like we should, you know, we're not the only group that, you know, gets marginalized, or we're not the only minority and all this stuff. And so I feel like it's very important as LGBT people, you know, to make efforts in other movements, you know, to not just stick to our own, you know, like for example, this Black Lives Matter movement, you know, do something about that too, you know. Like I said, we're all in this together, you know, we should all be helping each other out, not just our own community. You know what I mean? So whether it's, you know, the Black Lives Matter movement, or, you know, the people who are getting, you know, like after the border and in cages and stuff like that, you know, I feel like I would tell them just to like fight for everyone, you know, make an effort for your, like for your group obviously, but just, you know, remember that, you know, we're all like I know this is like cliche, we're all in this together, but you know, we are when we should be, you know what I mean? This is, we're all fighting for the same goal, you know, for equality. And we're not trying to be better than anyone else. That's not the goal. You know, a lot of people think, you know, some, you know, conservative people I've heard or have told me that like, oh, you're just trying to, you know, be like trying to take control of everybody. I'm like, no, you know, we're trying to reach the collective goal of equality, being equal, you know, regardless of color, you know, race, ethnicity, you know, sexual orientation, religion, you know, anything. You know, we're all human beings, and that's what we should all keep in mind. So also the one thing I want to talk about with the allies too is, you know, with allyship, you know, I just want people to know, for whoever's listening, um, and being an ally is not, oh, you know, I have an LGBTQ friend, or I have a gay friend and I love them and I'm an ally. I'm an ally. You know, that's not how it works. You know, of course we appreciate you being, you know, loving towards that person, but you know, allyship, you know, it encompasses so much more than that, and it involves, you know, much more. You know, you can't just say that you're an ally, or, you know, support one person and say you're an ally. It's just like, you know, what Josh was talking about with like, oh, like the token, you know, like, oh, I love you and support you, but like that's it, you know, or like, you know, but you know, yeah, we're a community. Like, you know, you got to be in support of all of us, you know, regardless of, you know, our shape, size, anything, you know, and you have to be there for us emotionally, you know, a lot of us, you know, some of us have mental health problems, or we just, you know, sometimes we struggle and we need a shoulder to cry on. Vote, for Christ's sake. I'm like, I cannot stress that enough. You know, you cannot say you're an ally and then vote for some politician or for some policy or from some legislation that's, you know, completely against the LGBT community. That's not how it works. Like, you know, support us, you know, politically, emotionally, and in general. You know, I mean, so I get so like about this topic. Sometimes I stumble on my words because I get so like, but I think you get the point. You know, you got to walk the talk. You know, it's different just to say it. You know, put those words into action and actually try to make a difference. And you know, that's what makes you a true ally. And to all our allies that are out there, who are helping us out, and to you, Veronica, specifically for trying to spread and, awareness, and try to make change. We really thank you guys for that, and we appreciate you, and, try to make a difference. And if you are, just keep going, and we appreciate you. And thank you.
Okay. Sorry.
Go ahead, Josh.
Okay, I was gonna say like 3 things really quick. So I liked how Sam brought up there's so much work that needs to be done, like so much work, and it's exhausting. And so I don't know, I was just like gonna like try to summarize things up. I think change needs to happen on 3 levels, and it's the institutional level, like look at our institutions in El Paso and make sure those people with systemic power use their privilege and power, monetary means, like do stuff and listen to people. And I'll tie that into like data collecting later right now. And then queer spaces in El Paso, the bars, stuff that's already known, stuff that's already ours. Like they have a platform, they should use it, listen to everyone. And then I think ourselves, when we transform ourselves, we transform like everything else. And accomplices need to listen. And then they just need to listen. And then number 2, what I want to say is data collecting. I think that the results are significant with data collecting, but I think the most important thing is how that data is collected, who's being included and participating within the data collection, and just what else do I have here? Yeah, just like I want to know who's collecting the data and how is it being collected. Just for like ethical reasons, like I wouldn't want something going into like some random place, even though they don't know anything about it, and just doing it for the sake of exploitation, basically. And then I guess one of the last questions was I guess a quote to like youth. I guess a cheesy quote that I like to use is, "You can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs," and things are gonna be tough. And obviously, I hate giving advice because everyone's situation is different and only you really know like what it's going to be like. But I feel like you need to sometimes, when you're going to have to like do something. And I just hope everyone watching, everyone, future generations, your time will come where you're going to like make a difference. And it's not going to be one time, it's continuously every day. So yeah, that's all I want to say.
All right, well, I think I'll go. I'll kind of touch on a little bit what Jocelyn said. Really, if you're not white, male, heteronormative, you have a target on your back. You could be discriminated against. And really, that's why me, I was in the some of the Black Lives Matter marches, and my sign said "All Black Lives Matter," and under the "all," I used the transgender flag colors to underline "all." So I'm trying to emphasize the plight of the Black trans woman who is being falling under the cracks and is targeted by a lot on all different sides, and also I welcome allies. The LGBT community we're a minority, so we aren't going to be winning any elections just on our own merits. We need allies there. There's this cute little shirt I want from HRC that it has the White House in rainbow colors, and it says elections matter. So it's important to get out there to vote, and I welcome allies. Just because you're an ally doesn't mean you're closeted or anything, or we're gonna all of a sudden hit on you. What you do matters, and we're appreciative of it. And we're appreciative of candidates like you, Veronica, who's here to listen to us and welcome us to the table. So yes, definitely go out there and vote, get involved, and be there for your community, and we'll be there for you.
I think I agree with every single person that has, I agree with all of it. I'm very impressed, and I agree with everyone to do all of those things. One thing, I think the greatest advice I received as like a 16-year-old, what I call baby gay, like, you know, cargo shorts for the first time, baby gay, back in 2006, was to be myself, to not worry about what does it look like to be gay? What does it look like to be a Black lesbian? But to focus on the things that I am interested in. To the youth or the people who are newly queer, my advice to you is to remember what's important to you. Focus on your hobbies. Be the person that you want to be. That's what's going to make the difference, right? If you want to be married, if you want to be a doctor, if you want to have 3 divorces like everybody else, do that. This doesn't define or change any other part of your life. And if our society and our culture aren't there yet, they'll catch up. I said I wanted to be a lawyer. I never knew that'd be a possibility. Society caught up. I said I wanted there to be gay marriage. Never thought it'd be a possibility in Texas. Society caught up 5 years ago. So be yourself. Care about the things that you care about. That's church. If that's sports, which I really recommend church, sports, and other activities that don't necessarily involve alcohol or drugs or anything, do those things and remember who you are. Find out what matters to you, and then everything else is going to be a lot easier. I agree with everyone else on the panel, and anyone that has any questions about anything, you're welcome to contact me through Facebook, or if you see me walking down the street, you know, wave at me. I know we're all in masks, so maybe if you want to wave at me and then email me, that's fine too. But if I could say anything that's going to resonate with y'all, is to be yourself no matter what, because that's what's going to help you at the very end.
I think those are all beautiful things to end on. And Portia, that just kind of wrapped it all up. Although you did bring up an issue that I think would take us hours to unpack, which is religion. And as someone who, again, was raised by, you know, my grandmother was raised Catholic, but then she shunned the institution of it, but was still very much, I think of her now as more of a Christian than when we think of as a Catholic. And she's the one who taught me to be who I am. But religion has been used in so many ways to oppress people and suppress people and suffocate people, but that has changed. And so I think at some point we might have to have a discussion, because I know that, you know, I'm in my early 40s, and a lot of younger people, younger followers of the campaign don't want to talk about religion at all. And for me, it's such a crucial part of my well-being and my self-care that I think like, but what else, where else are you going for some of that mental guidance and spiritual guidance? So I think that might be another space to talk. We might have to talk about that at some point later on, either privately or as part of what we're doing. But I really want to thank all of you for being so honest, for being here, for just creating a better El Paso. And I know that each one of you is making a really big difference in your sphere of influence. And I am just honored and so excited to have this. We are going to, for anyone who missed part of this or wants to listen to it again, we are going to, it's recorded, and so we're going to be posting it in different spaces so that people can watch it. You can share it with friends, you can share it with people that you know might be struggling. Again, it is about community, right? And it is about finding your tribe, finding the people that you feel you can be your whole self. And as Yoli was saying, people who just love you, punto, period. That's it. And so I hope this has been a great night for all of you. I love your smiling faces. And I think that's gonna be it. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a good night.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Bye.